My name is Emery Craig from the College of New Rochelle, Director of e-Learning. My colleague, Maya Georgieva, cannot be here today, unfortunately. She had a technical emergency of major proportions, so she has had to run back to NYU late last night. She's going to try to get back up to the conference later today, so I'm going to do the presentation myself, but it really is a joint presentation from both of us, so I can't take full credit for this. What I'd like to talk to you about today is really visual culture, the way that our lives are changing so dramatically in terms of what we, I think, our learning environments, our society at large. We're entering a very different era now, an era where text is being replaced by images, by the visual screen. And I think David Attenborough kind of sums this up, that we're just on the brink of an enormous change in our culture, really, as we move toward a deeply rich visual culture. Visual literacy, it's interesting, it started in the late 1960s. A lot of things started in the 1960s. There's an international organization, Visual Literacy Association, can trace back to a meeting in Rochester, New York, from a group of people that began thinking about this around 1967 or 68. The term was first coined by John Davies with the following definition: visual literacy refers to a group of visual competencies that a human being can develop by seeing and at the same time having and integrating other sensory experiences. The development of these competencies is fundamental to normal human learning. The organization is still in existence today, but this was really the first time, in many ways, that people were kind of getting started on this, thinking about visual literacy, about how we might incorporate it into our learning environments. But let's drop back a little bit. Of course, 50 years ago, this period was a much simpler time in some ways, right? Was it not? Or so it seems now. Back then, I guess it didn't seem so simple, but it surely was less complex in terms of the role of visual images. The Brownie camera was, interestingly enough, being marketed to women. Women were not considered, of course, to be technologically adept, but the camera companies were beginning to say that this is a family device, not just men can use this, women can use this also. It's a small little handheld thing. It's very easy to use. Things were being sold based on their simplicity. There's another image here, Kodak Instamatic movie camera in 1968. Interestingly, the language here is not all that dissimilar to our own today in the digital era. Remember when things were big, expensive, and mysterious? Of course, mainframes were big, expensive, and mysterious, were they not? And what has happened now, of course, is that it's all been changed. Things have become easy to use. They become handheld. We walk around with computers in our pockets. We don't think about that. We call them phones, but they're really not phones. They really are computers, just portable ones. So there's a kind of similar development, if you will. But let's just step back further for a moment to visual images and go all the way back to the very beginning here of the history of photography. Jacques-Louis Daguerre took a photograph in 1839. It's absolutely wonderful, amazing image. And he took that outside his window at Boulevard du Temple in Paris shortly before Haussmann went and completely destroyed much of the city, turned it into a very beautiful city that it is today, but took out all the old buildings. And when he did that in 1839, he was experimenting with images and cameras and trying to understand how all this stuff works. And he caught an image of a human being. It was the first time a photograph of a person had been taken. And if you look very closely there, kind of hard to see, but right up here on the corner, very faintly, there's a man there getting his shoes shined. The man had stopped for 7 minutes because that was the exposure time at that point. That's how long it took to get an exposure. That's why the street looks empty. The street was actually full. He just didn't catch any of that. All of that vanished. But one person standing there getting his shoes shined became the very first person to ever inadvertently, accidentally, if you will, have their photograph taken. And it's interesting in a way, of course, because this is Photography, of course, has had this kind of voyeuristic quality the whole way through, does it not? And even today, where we have so many images that are taken, you know, you see the thing all the time on the line, right? Online, oh, somebody didn't know, the image was taken, students use it in cyberbullying, it's kind of all over the place, and it goes almost right back to its roots, if you will. It actually turns out in this photograph that there are other people in there. People have analyzed this. The image is, interestingly enough, only about 6 inches across. Very, very small little image because it's on a glass plate. There's a very faint image of a child in a window somewhere, but it's kind of interesting because it's sort of the first big one. And it's interesting, too, with Daguerre's own comment on the process here. He says, quote, "I have seized the light. I have arrested its flight." So moving up, of course, documentary photography in the 1930s, a very famous photograph by Dorothea Lange. I'm sure that most of you know this. It was, you know, taken out in California. She had stopped her car, got out, gone over to a migrant labor camp, took a photograph of this woman really in a shed who was, you know, desperate for food, desperate to get by in the middle of the Great Depression. Have any of you seen the other photographs that she took of this woman? You haven't, have you? Right, no. Because, of course, the photograph, she shot a whole roll of film. She shot off like 18 images, sent them in to an editor. This is the one that was picked. In other words, it wasn't crowdsourced. It wasn't picked by us. It wasn't picked even by her. She just sent in a whole roll of film, and this is the one that was chosen. So it was an interesting collaborative process. Of course, the editor knew her work. The editor knew what the public liked. But it is interesting. You can do this. You can take a look online and see the other images and question why was this one chosen as opposed to another one. And it becomes a kind of iconic image, if you will, of that time period of the Great Depression. But the photographer herself really had no role in the selection of that. Today, of course, we end up in a very different world. You all know it. You see it all the time. I see it in New York City. We don't have a lot of crime, thank goodness, these days. A lot of stuff doesn't happen on the streets, but when it does, what happens? Everybody's smartphones comes out, and everybody begins photographing. You're sitting there looking at the crowd going, I hope someone's calling 911 if that's what's needed. You know, I hope someone did, because everyone seems to be recording what's happening as opposed to doing anything about it. You go to a concert, everybody's got their phone up, you know, and on it goes. And it seems like every single thing that we do, all of us, because we all have a camera built in, we all have video built into our camera devices, that we just stand there with our hands above our head taking images or videos. Narrative clip. Cameras are getting smaller and smaller. I have one here if you want to take a look at it after. It's a Kickstarter project from a couple years ago. Fascinating little device, very different kind of camera. Basically, it takes an image every 30 seconds. 5 megabyte image, basically like an older smartphone, if you will. Just no matter where it's pointing, takes an image every 30 seconds. Does not have an off button on it, so there's nothing to click. You actually can tap the side of it and do that. I just took an image by doing that. But generally speaking, it just sits there and clicks away every 30 seconds. You upload it online. Because you end up with so many images from something like this, basically you have algorithms that then try to parse the images to make sense of them, because you can end up with, I think it's 12,000 images a week if you wore it all day. Which, of course, you know, you're 1 week of wearing this and you could spend the next year sort of simply going through all the images. But it's a very different kind of photography, because in the end, what's happening here, the point is you're not trying to take every single image. You end up really not caring about it. 95% of the images end up being terrible, really. They end up being pictures of the ceilings, pictures of the walls, whatever, this, that, and whatnot. The whole point of using something like this as a life logging camera is that you end up with the unscripted moments, that where you want to take a photograph of something, you go, oh, I have to get my phone out and do it. That by the time you do, the scene is over, the stuff has changed, something else has happened, and you go, I missed it. I could have taken it. So it's the idea that you're just going to simply record every single moment of your life, or every single moment when you wear this, and you will be able to retrieve those images later on. It's a fascinating idea. I have worn it a lot. I end up with way too many images, and look at a guy, just can't begin to go through all this. I don't think the algorithm is all that good in terms of understanding the images. It's going to have to. I mean, again, you go back to Dorothea Lange, what happened? You had 16 images, an editor picked one, said that's the one that everybody's going to see. You wear something like this over the course of a week, you can have anywhere from 1 to 12,000 images, and you go, what do I begin to do? I can't go through this. I can't be my own editor. Software has to now be the editor. I can't even edit it. Even crowdsourcing that becomes, in some ways, too much because there's just simply too many images. So it's kind of a fascinating development. And if you look at the interior of it, it's very, very nicely designed. I mean, it has an accelerometer, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, USB port, battery, camera lens, memory, and GPS, and that is it. You can't even, I mean, you can upload it to your computer, but that's just a transition moment where you're really putting it online. And it comes with 1-year service, and you keep everything online, wipes the thing after, after you upload, and you start all over again. Since there's no off switch, and I've made this mistake many a time, sit it on your coffee table, face up, and guess what happens? Pictures of your ceiling. So you learn the hard way after a couple days of using this that it's got to be face down, because if it's not face down, you're going to end up with images that are absolutely pointless, because it just sits there and happily snaps away, taking photographs the whole time. So the cameras get smaller and smaller and smaller. This is probably, I think this may be the world's smallest camera, but don't quote me on that because there may be something else on here. The camera there's a syringe next to this for perspective to give you a sense of size. The camera is not that square device that's there attached to the wires. It's the dot in the middle of that square device. The camera basically is the size of a grain of sand. Of a large grain of sand. It doesn't take the best images. It's roughly 1/20th of a megapixel. It's really not so good. I mean, that's like really the old days of an absolutely terrible smartphone. Maybe we wouldn't even call it a smartphone, but the very early mobile devices that we had. But you know the image quality is only going to get better over the course of time. It's going to change. Something like this is used for what? For medical work, number one. And the idea of this is that it becomes a disposable one. Instead of having to take an expensive medical device, use it, sterilize it so that we can use it again, you use it one time, you throw it out. And of course, it's so small, the size of a grain of sand, that because you can shrink the holder down even more, the only reason this was designed like this is so you can pick it up. Because honestly, if you just had the camera, you wouldn't be able to find it on your desktop unless it was attached to the wire, because that's the size that it is. So it's fascinating. So all of this, of course, puts us in just an incredible position. It's been estimated that 3.8 trillion photographs have been taken since Daguerre put his camera on the windowsill and let it sit there for 7 minutes and take a single image. 1/10 of those photographs were taken in the past year. 3.8 billion. 1/10 of all photographs ever taken. That's only going to increase as time goes on. That is why we need visual literacy, why we need to start thinking in terms of this. McLuhan, of course, was onto this in some ways, as he was onto so much of the web. It's a wonderful, crazy image of him from the book. He coined so many of the terms that we use today, surfing, even going through things in non-linear fashion. In the text, he quotes from Poe's Mariner, The Descent in the Maelstrom, who avoids being sucked into a whirlpool only by understanding how it works. And I think that's the situation that we're in. We're going to have to understand how all of this works, or otherwise we're going to get sucked into something also. So as we step into this, let's take a look at learning through new visual media, through some of the things that we can do here. 21st century students, media consumption, of course, 2009, it was 6 hours and 21 minutes. It's now gone up by 2013. I know it's higher now, to 7 hours and 38 minutes in the space of just 4 years it's increased by an hour and some odd minutes, just in terms of that, okay? It's going to increase, I guess it becomes the whole entire day, right? Every waking moment of our day. But when you think about it, instructors, students are immersed in this kind of world. How many instructors even stop and think about this world unless they're in a media department and doing this as media studies faculty? But instructors outside of that so oftentimes don't give it really all that much thought. I find it interesting with my students. I teach courses on digital culture and in a senior capstone project, and they do the research papers, and I tell them, add images. And they just get completely thrown, because by then they're seniors and they've been taught, really, you can put a graph in a research paper, but don't put an image in a research paper. Okay, don't. If you want to put a style graph in, that makes sense. And I'm like, yes, of course you can put an image in there, because you're going to go out in the world, no one's going to really ask you to do a research paper unless you're going to grad school and going to stay in higher education. You're probably going to go out in the world, get a job, and have to do project plans, and images just might be helpful to something like that. Okay, so learn how to put in images, the right kind of images to use, and they're just like, no, I was told I can't do that. So it's more than, of course, than just being smart with images, though that helps. I was reading last night about this, and it turns out in Yellowstone Park, 5 people have been gored by bison this year so far. 3 of them from trying to take selfies with bison. Bison are wonderful animals. I love them. I think they're absolutely amazing. And they're basically not all that dangerous. They're not like grizzly bears. You can stand within 20 or 30 feet of them. What you don't do is get within 3 feet of one and hold up your selfie stick and turn your back to it, okay? Because if you do, you've got a good likelihood that, that thing is going to say, I don't want you in my space. So. So it's not just about the stupidity of stuff like that. It's really about learning how to work with images, about how to see the kind of resources that are available online, the kind of scientific data, the kind of social data that we can use. This is an image from Ushahidi, which is a platform. It means testimony in Swahili, and it's a website that was initially developed to map reports of violence in Kenya after the post-election fallout at the beginning of 2008. Now it's being used everywhere. It's absolutely wonderful because, of course, what it maps data, it can map data pretty much live. People are taking stuff on their phone, uploading it on their phone. The data, you can analyze the data by clicking on any of the icons on the site, and it's now being used far beyond Kenya. It's being used around the world to analyze patterns of violence. This tool is both mobile and interactive. As you can see it here, you have the clicks, of course, sad to say. The United States comes out with the nice biggest bubble there because of the levels of violence that we do have, which is crazy. In other ways, of course, games are increasing immersive visual experiences, and people are beginning to use games in different ways. This is just an interesting contrast here. This is Wolfenstein's game graphics in 1992 versus 2014. In 1992, we looked at that and we went, wow, that's so absolutely amazing, the image on your left, right? That is the coolest thing ever. I can't believe they've been able to do that. And of course, here we are today, in 2014. And of course, that's only going to get better too as time goes on. So, what's happening here, you don't necessarily see the change from year to year. It's like there's a slow tide coming in. You look at the shoreline, and then you look at it an hour later and go, it hasn't changed. But you come back and look at it 8 hours later, and it has changed dramatically. You come back 5, 10, 15 years, and you go, oh my goodness, look at the world we live in now. And of course, this becomes, the image on the right becomes the baseline for our students, does it not? They don't even know the image on the left, basically. That's some very antiquated kind of thing that, only those of us who are got a lot more years on them have seen. Absolute beauty of something like Grand Theft Auto 5, and of course beauty is not a term that we often use with something like the GTA series, but nonetheless it is absolutely amazing. The images are just simply stunning, and it has reached the point now, it has gotten so good that people are using GTA as a platform for taking photographs. There are photographer groups that meet in GTA and take photographs. This particular example here by Benoit Palais, he actually captures image, then he inserts afterwards, he manipulates the photograph and inserts his hand and a camera in. So he's doing the photograph and then adding something post that to create images of scenes in GTA. So there is a need here really for 21st century skills. The Engage report has said that visual literacy is a key skill for the future. We have to be able to work with knowledge of visual images. We have to understand the basic elements of visual design. We have to be aware, and I think this is important, of the emotional, psychological, and cognitive influences in perceptions of visuals. And we have to be informed viewers, consumers, and critics of visual information. But of course, what many of the statements on visual literacy miss sometimes is that, again, like going back to the Dorothea Lange photograph, we are no longer the editors. There are no editors here now. We are the editors. Everything becomes crowdsourced. So you post things up on Facebook, anywhere else, and what? It's the crowd that decides if the image is important or not. And it's a dynamic that, of course, makes our K through 12 environments so incredibly tough these days, almost like a nightmare. Sometimes I hear my students do presentations, and some of them work in the public schools as administrative aides or even on the level of assistant principals, and they just say every Monday morning we go in and we just start with the chaos from the weekend. Because, of course, what has happened over the weekend is somebody has taken a photograph of somebody else, or they took it last week, it got shared, it went viral, it's all over the place. No, it was not done on school grounds, but nonetheless, it is on school grounds because it is online. And there we are, we get into, we get to the building, we call in the two students, we call in the parents, we, grab the smartphones and try to decide what to do. But again, there isn't a whole lot one can do because the image is already out there. And then sometimes, of course, it's kids with malicious intent, and it really is bad, but other times I've heard stories where it's kids that just made a silly, honest mistake, and they're sitting there going, really don't want to, expel the girl for 2 weeks or something like that because they're a college-bound student, they're doing really well, they could do so good, this is going to be so damning. But of course, they've done something that is now out there online. You can erase the images. There it is. Just over the past year and some months, of course, we've had the debut of 2 live streaming video apps, Meerkat and Periscope. Both have potential, I think, in the learning environment. I think we're still trying to work out how to deal with this, but it does allow the opportunity to, say, bring in, for example, outside experts to have communication with somebody else without going through the big thing of setting up a video conferencing sort of thing. And it also allows you to put in, for people who are participating, to add comments. Of course, it also can get used in other ways, and these things can become viral and go off in a very different direction. Ron Bleed, which it's really interesting. Ron has been working on this for a number of years, and this was said back in 2006. Being visually literate will be a prerequisite in the future because visual media are integral to how we work, entertain, communicate, and educate. Although visual literacy is in its academic infancy, it is rapidly evolving outside the academy. We also need to do it inside the academy. So with that, let's take a look at a couple immersive experiences, where things are going. Street Museum, if you're not familiar with it, definitely take a look at it. It's fascinating. I don't think it's available here. It started out in London. It's a smartphone app, and it was the Museum of the City of London that put this together. If you go to London, where do you go? You go to the Tate, you go to a whole bunch of museums, right? But you pretty much don't go to the Museum of the City of London. It was a little bit of a backwater. They had a wonderful collection of 19th century photographs. What they did is create an app, allow you to be able to hold up your phone to look at these photographs in the context of where they were taken. It completely revolutionized where they were and their relationship with the public. First of all, it just boosted attendance tremendously. All of a sudden, everybody started coming. Everybody said, this is a great photograph. I really have to go to this place, take a look at the original. But it was better than just that because, of course, you go into a museum and what happens? You look at photographs on white walls, and they're good, but it's like you don't see, you have to kind of recall the context. Whereas with this app, you can do this. This is actually the museum in Amsterdam is now doing the same thing. Everybody's copied this because it's such a good idea. And you hold up your phone, you open up the app, you turn on your camera, and you're looking at a scene, and superimposed over it, augmented reality-wise, is the image of an event that took place there. Could be a minor one, not a major one. Somebody's truck almost ended up in a canal, but you can do it in London, and you can see scenes of bombing in 1942, in the 1940s, World War II, or scenes going all the way back to the 1800s. And Maya and I were doing this when we kind of met in London this past Christmas, and we used the app, and I felt like I was being the stupidest tourist ever, because I'm sitting there holding my phone in front of my face, not just taking photographs, but going around like looking at things. Obviously, someday this will all be wearable technology. It would be very different, but it is fascinating, because it just allows you to see things in a way that you couldn't before. Much better than a guidebook, okay? Other things that are happening in terms of this is what I tried this out at South by Southwest, kind of cinematic virtual reality. This is called Birdly. It is a flying machine of sorts. You lay very flat on it, and you have a fan right in your face. You wear your virtual reality goggles, and off you go. You feel like you're flying over the city of San Francisco. So it's a deeply, deeply immersive experience. I'm not going to show the video on this. I can put this up on Digital Bodies later on, digitalbodies.net, if you want to take a look at it. But Journalism Project in Syria is absolutely amazing, because again, it's a virtual reality project that has where you wear goggles and your headset, and you are basically dropped into a Syrian refugee camp, which is just it's a horrifying experience. And some people just come out of this afterwards with tears in their eyes, going, it's so different seeing it like this than it is seeing it, just as images on a page. And Stanford Virtual Reality Lab, I had a chance to do Jeremy Bailenson virtual reality rig at the Tribeca Film Festival back in May of this year. I think it was May of this year. And it is, if you have the opportunity to do real virtual reality, definitely try it out. Have any of you used Oculus Rift? Couple of you? Okay, good. Yeah, it's starting to happen, right? But the Bailenson's thing from Stanford is absolutely amazing, and it's like when I got up there, they said, "You want fear or fun?" Of course, I chose fear, which means you get to walk the plank, and you're walking across this room, and it all looks fine, and then they turn around and the floor drops away, and only the plank is there, and you're sitting there telling yourself, "I know what I'm seeing, but I can walk anywhere in this room." My mind is saying you can walk anywhere, but your body is going, you cannot step off that plank. You are going to die if you do. And you have this battle between yourself, and it just shows the power of visual sensory experience. So. Google Cardboard, we were talking about this at the beginning while we were waiting to get set up. It's absolutely amazing. Maya and I used it yesterday in our workshop on wearable technology and virtual reality. Amazing device. You've already got everything you need for it except the cardboard, basically, okay? Because you've got the phone, and all you have to do is with the phone add in the software, the apps, and the cardboard itself. What Google is going to do starting this fall, I think, is there's a project called Expeditions, where basically they are going to provide schools around the world for very low cost a whole set of Google Cardboard viewers, one tablet for the instructor. Instructors will be able to take students on virtual reality field trips. If it's schools in areas where there's not great Wi-Fi, they even provide the Wi-Fi equipment to add onto this. I'm sure they're trying to connect this with Project Loon with the balloons down the road. So it's going to be even more amazing. So even kids in very remote and poor impoverished areas of the world will have amazing opportunities. This is Jaunt camera. We're going to start to get into, of course, 3D and virtual reality cameras. I think give us another 5 years and we'll say, I can't believe we actually got out a phone and took a photograph like that. That instead we'll want to take photographs that are entirely three-dimensional. And take a look at the Jaunt app if you have like the Google Cardboard viewer, because it's absolutely amazing for what you can do with it. I use the 360 Panorama app. That's another one to do. I think it's incredible. Round Me is a good one also. But 360 Panorama app is very simple. You basically, you hold your phone up, you open up the app, and you just start going around and taking images. It stitches together a 360 view of the space that you are in. And it's, you know, it's a very different experience, and having that, you can then look at it, you can upload it online, share the link with other people to see. The future of visual reality experience, I only got a couple minutes here, so I'll kind of go through this fast. We will get OLED screens. They're still hard to produce, but we're getting there. We're getting closer and closer. And it's just the problem right now is that they're difficult to manufacture. They produce very low yields, but that will probably change dramatically. The screens will, of course, all be flexible in the same kind of way that we're going to get wallpaper displays. These are coming. Going to be all that long before we'll be able to, and I will love the day when we don't have to do a media center anymore and somebody can just walk into a room with a rolled up, you know, screen and a couple of magnets and just pop it on the wall, and nobody has to call my staff and say, you know, we don't have video, we don't have media in such and such room. And I just, you know, just take the thing and go, put it up like a poster, and we will get there. But it's going to take a while, but I don't think it's going to take all that long. Right now, something like this would cost about $9,000 or $10,000, but the price will come down. I mean, it changes so fast. We had a College Universal show the other week. We got a donation from NBC, 50 monitors. The monitors are only 3 to 4 years old. You know, something we'll never get them all installed. I know we won't, because they're already so. So NBC's just throwing out things that are 3 to 4 years old. We got them. We'll probably try to install some, but I don't even think we'll do them all, because we'll go, by the time we get them all installed, we'd be wanting to take them out too and go on to something else that's, you know, that's thinner, lighter, easier to use. I will show this, if I can do this little video of, and I don't know if I can. Let's see if I can do this video of HoloLens, which is utterly fascinating.
Look around.
Can you hear it or no?
Technology is all around us. We use it in every aspect of our lives. It enables us to do amazing things. But what if we could go further? What if we could go beyond the screen? Where your digital world is blended with your real world. Now we can. This is the world with holograms. What will they enable us to do? New ways to visualize our work.
I have an idea for the fuel tank.
New ways to share ideas with each other.
How are things going your end?
I just put the images in OneDrive.
Perfect.
More immersive ways to play. New ways to teach and learn.
So put the new trap in the place of the old one.
Now what?
And tighten here and here.
New ways to collaborate and explore the places we've never been.
Look at this formation. Let's take a closer look.
And new ways to create the things we imagine. Because when you change the way you see the world, you can change the world you see. This is Microsoft HoloLens.
HoloLens is a pretty amazing device. It's a kind of holographic reality device that Microsoft is working on as part that will be deeply embedded in Windows 10. Other thing here, I won't show the image, but have any of you heard of Magic Leap? Yeah, which Google invested $500 million in recently, and This is a whole different thing. When we talk about a different use of images, there's no screen on this. Very few people have seen it. But with Magic Leap, basically, it's a wearable device. It beams an image directly into your eye. There's a little teeny projector. And Magic Leap's approach to this is to say that the brain is the best visual display device we could ever have. So it's kind of interesting. It gets rid of the whole notion of the screen completely. It just completely changes. Another image from Magic Leap. People that have seen it said it's absolutely amazing. It's not augmented reality or virtual reality. It's just something entirely different, and it completely fools the brain. I'll show this one and then end with one other image, which is pretty good. It's fascinating. Lily is a drone, and it's going to come out next year, and it simply follows you around and photographs you. I mean, fascinating device. Of course, right now, it's only got like a 12-minute battery life or something like that. It's not that great when it's not even out yet, but you know this is going to change, and it will be very different down the road. And last but not least, of course, if you haven't heard of Project Jacquard, which Google announced recently at the last I/O conference, take a look at it, because it may change the whole way we do interfaces, and again, that will affect our access to visual images. Project Jacquard is taking conductive thread that will be integrated into our clothing. Basically, it can be done on industrial looms. It can go in any kind of clothing that we wear, which means that basically anything that we have, or even fabric on our walls, could become a digital interface. I'm trying to think about that in terms of the implications for social media. You know, it's like your clothes are going to start vibrating when you get notifications. It's been an interesting experience having an Apple Watch, because it's like I don't want that many notifications. It's one thing when it's on my phone. It's another thing when it's on your wrist. You go, what happens when it's on your whole body? But you know, it may even change our whole relationship to visual images. We don't have to grab a mouse. We don't have to use a trackpad. We may just do gestures on our clothing, and that may be the wave of the future. We'll have to see what happens on that. So anyways, I think this has been a very forward thinking presentation, and I hope you'll come out from this and just don't think about where we are now, think about where we're going to be 5 to 10 years from now, and we need to prepare for that, because you all are leaders, educators, and we're the ones that have to, if we don't understand this and take the reins on this, it's going to take us. It's probably going to take us for a very wild ride anyways, but it's up to all of us to help make visual literacy a reality. Thank you very much. Okay.